we are recording now.
Hi, Joseph.
We are live. Hi, Neil. So this is the podcast. I'm going to introduce you in a pre-recorded sound bit, so we'll skip that part here.
Okay, Eyesore. This is Eyesore.
This is Eyesore.
Episode 1.
Episode number 1.
Super.
Felt appropriate because this art journey of mine, my personal one, was basically, I don't know if it was started by you, but you were like a pivotal figure in my journey, because I was in the halls of MSU at Mississippi State, and I was just kind of, you had these drawings of some students you had done, and I was like, whoa, I want to draw like that. So, because that kind of stuff wasn't anything like I had seen before, and I didn't really know if that was a possibility. So I came into your drawing one class, even though I'd already taken it before. I took it again with you, and that turned out to be a really pivotal, important class for me that kind of changed the way that I look at just the whole way that I even look at art. Anyway,
you're the only student I've ever had that volunteered to take drawing 1 again. Usually they're exhausted and done at the end, and they unless they fail them, which is rare, they usually move on. It was you're unique in that way, Joseph.
Well, I guess that's a compliment. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, the very first question I have for you is Next Generation or Deep Space Nine?
Oh, Next Generation for sure.
For sure? On what grounds?
Man, I like Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is probably pretty low down on my list. I would put Voyager probably above.
Really?
Deep Space Nine.
Huh.
Yeah. And TNG at the top.
The tip top. Okay.
I mean, partly for sentimental reasons. It's when I was growing up, it was on, And partly because, any day I'd take Jean-Luc Picard as my captain.
Oh, yeah.
I would most like to be Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it about Cisco? Is Cisco a little
Oh, he's fine. He's fine.
Picard's just cool.
Picard. Come on. Would you want to
do?
Who would you be most afraid of in a battle? It would be Picard.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, loyalty of that crew is insane.
Right. There isn't so much bickering.
No. No.
Yeah. I actually just got into Star Trek by my roommate who was telling me all about this stuff, and so I've only been watching TNG and Deep Space Nine. It's like they're my two whatever. They're the ones people always recommend. And so far, I like the continuity of Deep Space Nine at least.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. But yeah, there's definitely pros to both. But that continuity is what, I don't know. That's kind of seals the deal. It always feels like the universe gets reset. All this stuff we worked so hard for,
totally,
in TNG.
Well, it bridged the originals, where they were so episodic in the originals, where they really did reset. And that in TNG, it sort of has that. They get better at the end, like seasons, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, or maybe 5, 6, 7. They start to they feel larger. They feel like you're really more in a movie. I think that's probably when they started making their movies.
Oh, right.
But the first ones are kind of bad, kind of wonderfully bad, but episodically just sort of bad.
Oh, so I've just been in season 1 and 2, so maybe I should time warp a little.
Yeah, keep going. Season 4, really, they hit their stride.
Okay.
I think their budget increased too.
That makes sense. Okay, so now
let's just keep talking. No, let's keep talking about that.
Keep talking on Star Trek. Maybe we should just make
what kind of podcast is that? It has not really defined yet, right? This is the first one, in other words.
Still early stages. Yeah, let's just reroute course.
Yeah, that's
set
right.
new coordinates. Anyway.
Engage.
So now for you, what was the first? When did you know that you wanted to be a painter? or when did you decide on that as your path?
I guess just it evolved, really. Oh shit. I'm gonna block that to decline that. Sorry, my phone was on silent, but can you still see me?
Yep.
I can't see you now. How do I get back? Hide selfie. Sorry, Joseph.
No worries. I'm sure I can edit this out. And if not, whatever. It's charming.
My phone's paired to the computer.
To the computer?
And it
Oh, I
rang,
see.
and now I'm only looking at myself, and I can't see you, and I wonder how I get back. Oh, there it is. I did it.
We're back? Cool.
Yeah, we're back. Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
When did I decide? When was the no decision moment, no decisive moment? I think it's something I tell students a lot too. You don't have to decide. Don't decide. Don't think about the end game, like what your profession is going to be and what sort of jobs you're going to get. I just liked painting. I always liked painting. I like painting and drawing and art generally from being a little kid. And I went to an arts high school, and then I went to the painting program in Indiana, and it just sort of, evolved. I just kept pursuing that activity that I liked.
Okay.
Getting a little bit better, following people that I thought were good at it, listening to them, making friends with other painters. It just kind of kept going. I'd say in terms of a career, there was a professor, Tim Kennedy at Indiana, whose life I thought looked good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like rode his bike to his job teaching painting, and then his studio was nearby, and in summer they went to Italy and like taught painting in Italy. And I thought, well, that looks pretty good. I could do that. You just basically talk or make paintings all the time, I thought. And that was a moment I thought, well, that could be something for me if I pursued it. I bet I could be happy that way.
Okay. Why did you choose Indiana University, or did it just kind of fall into your lap?
I mean, I felt like I was being deliberate. I definitely looked at some other places and applied other places. I was, 17 or something. Mm-hmm. So I knew that they had a good program. My sister had gone there, not for art. So I had visited in Bloomington a couple times. I also was going to go to Boston, University of Boston, or Boston University. They had a great program, and I was really all set to go. And I can't really tell you why I chose Indiana as that moment. My parents said, either one, we'll work it out. And for some reason I just said, okay, well, I don't want to go to Boston. I'll go to Indiana. And, I don't know what could have been, but Indiana was great. I'm from Louisville, so it took, it was like a 2-hour drive, far away, kind of.
Right,
can't just drop in. I was definitely in a different place, but I could get home when I needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Indiana University seems to be, it keeps popping up when I talk to people or meet people. It seems like some sort of nexus of, I don't know, it seems like solid painters come out of IU for some reason. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm here at Arkansas now, and we're like hiring people, and every time you put a job application or job posting out, applications come in from Indiana. It's a big program. It's sort of a mecca, I think, in the region in terms of a state school that it has really solid art program and specifically painting program. And they have kind of a certain bent to them. Mm-hmm. It's very solid in painting, but they're not trying to do all things painting. They have an observational kind of core, to the way that they talk and think about and make paintings. And I think that's really good. It would be sort of akin to like their brand. There's a sense that those painters from Indiana still use paint and make pictures in paint. They're not, there's the occasional student, I think, that branches out from that, but more or less they're about crafting good painting. Some people would see that as like too traditional, but those people I think are wrong.
Yeah.
There's got to be room for that. There certainly is room for that. And I think if you tried to do all things painting in your program, you tried to accept and encourage all types of paintings as it's being more broadly defined today, you might run the risk of just being wishy-washy program and doing nothing particularly well.
Right. You need to sort of focus.
Yeah, a focus. It's not like it's a state school, right? So it's not super sharp like an atelier or, but it's kind of strongly headed one direction.
Mm-hmm. And then you went to Rutgers after that.
Yeah.
And so how was that? And also, so was there a choice with Rutgers, or was it kind of like same thing? This seems normal-ish, or how was the MFA versus the BFA experience? And
I wanted different experiences. So I knew enough to know that Indiana was giving me a very strong, but not particularly broad view of contemporary painting. And it was in sweet Bloomington, Indiana, not in a big urban, place where painting is, part of the culture. So I targeted schools on the East Coast in big cities that would tap me into some sort of contemporary art world. But I looked at schools that weren't going to try to make me be not a painter. Because there were those schools where I saw students come in the painting program making paintings and then leave doing video.
Oh, right.
Or performance. And there's some of that happened with my cohort at Rutgers, but talking to the faculty at Rutgers, I realized that there are some painters there that are going to support me just wanting to make paintings. And I knew enough about myself that that's what I probably would want to do. So I was looking for a contemporary, very relevant graduate program that would help me push concept and learn about contemporary art, but also allow me to be the painter that I thought I was trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it did that. It was great. We had visitors, every week, sometimes multiple visitors a week usually from New York City, like art scene, would take the train into New Brunswick and come studio visit or give talks. And and every weekend I'd go up to New York and go to shows. And I mean, you're in New York, you know what it's like. It's different than the middle of the country. Yeah. And particularly in that way where you could really go to a place where the arts are like taken over multiple blocks of a city and it's thriving.
Right. Fun. It's its own mini little culture, little community.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You can almost, you can sort of have a little art town there, like you feel a little like a stranger in a strange land in rural patches. But anyway.
Yeah. And you don't have to, particularly in the South, I find that you have to convince people all the time that what you're doing is valid, that being an artist is important and that there's value there. I don't have to just do a practical kind of job in that sense. People are sometimes suspicious in rural or Southern communities of artists. And that's just not the case in big city Northeast.
Right. So, so these days you're doing, well, talking about your process, I think of you as someone who uh, I think you said something like, I'm not very exacting, but I'm confident. And I like, is it fair to say you kind of start with a kernel of a feeling and you approach that as you make a painting? Uh, and you, without really knowing where you're going, you know that the thing you're doing right now is solid. And so as you make a painting, I'm thinking of like so let's use Dusty's workspace as an example. Did you just kind of you started? Well, how about just describe the process of making that one?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right. I do think that way. I don't execute paintings. I have enough to get going, and then I am confident that I'll be able to work it out. It might take a long time to do it, but eventually I can solve painting problems and I can make the painting work. That Dusty's workspace painting came relatively fast. It happened in maybe 3 months. Largely because other paintings before it took a long time to figure out. And when I arrived at that painting, I had some stuff figured out, and that one was like a little bit clearer, the path I was going to push it towards. So that painting was, I think, the last real painting that I did in my basement studio in Kentucky. I had this old house in Dusty, a basement, not a studio, low ceiling. And I made these setups that really felt like they belonged in the basement. That one had this pink grow light, and I think it was the first one with this pink grow light, which I had down there anyway because I had the studio in 2/3 of the basement, and then 1/3 was like a washer and a dryer and a little place to sprout seedlings for my garden with the grow light. So I wanted more color in these basement paintings. The ones before were pretty like yellow brown. And I thought, well, I don't want to put like colorful objects in there that felt false. So I put that pink light and then a kind of a greenish, institutional fluorescent light in the foreground. So they were the same type of objects, but they were cast in this whole pink green kind of, relationship, which made the painting a lot more colorful. And that painting, you tell me when to shut up about that painting because I can talk. It's a kind of an important painting for me because it really felt like I was figuring some stuff out. That painting, I set it all up. I set the whole still life up, and I was thinking about creating a still life that felt extracted from somebody's life. Not a still life that felt like arranged,
right,
or a painting, but a still life that felt like it would be naturally existing in someone's life. And the basement was a good context for that because weird things happen down there. It's storage. It's, there are little side projects happening. There are memorabilia things happening. Sometimes people have like little man cave-ish kind of nooks in basements, to hide away. So this character Dusty was conjured, and this sort of setup was conjured that he would have a little space down there in his basement where he's growing some plants, and he's got an old TV that he's watching, and he's like, a space for him. And hopefully it would conjure a sense of a real person, a character in the viewer, for the viewer. So I set that thing up, and then I took it all down, and then I set it back up really fast. That was my strategy.
Oh, interesting.
So that it wouldn't look too placed. And then through the course of the painting, stuff did get rearranged and added a little bit, but that setting it up really fast and letting things not be too, exactly arranged was important. And that painting was one of the first paintings, one of the first paintings where I left my idea of filling up the picture plane with a sort of a bulging bubble kind of composition. I had painted things that were pushing out into the space, like from the middle, and left the middle more or less empty and created a sort of a donut composition that activated all the way around in a sort of a circular or implied movement composition, but left the middle kind of left the middle kind of empty. So that the viewer would go round and round and round and round and follow this strong kind of implied movement and hopefully stay invested and interested in the painting for a while, because I was interested in that, making paintings that sort of kept your interest and slowed you down and gave you a sort of a different kind of an experience. Not something that you could sort of get at all the information quickly, but a slow kind of experience for the viewer. And there are a lot of little subtle jokes and rhythms and rhymes where, like, there's this little rainbow motif that picks up in multiple places, but they're like little rainbows, you don't even really notice them at first. So that if you were thinking like, oh, if you noticed a little rainbow, then maybe your eye would notice the other little rainbow up here.
Right.
And then you would notice another little rainbow, and there'd be like this rainbow path. And then there was like an ellipses path, a bunch of ellipses. And then there was like a color path, like green. So I was trying to like layer the more I could do that. If I had like an idea, if I could make it work in the painting, I felt like that would make the painting stronger. Like more is more. Mm-hmm. If I could juggle 4 balls instead of 3, and then I can juggle 5 balls and 6 balls, that it would be more, sort of not just impressive, but just profound accomplishment for the painting.
Make it rich.
Yeah.
Very definitely. Rich donut.
Exactly. Donut. A donut with like rich cream filling and icing and sprinkles. Yeah.
A rainbow donut.
A rainbow.
Did you ever have rainbow bagels in New York, by the way? Was that a thing when you were there?
I did not when I lived there, but when we came back for a student trip.
Okay.
There was a place, I think it was in Williamsburg.
It was probably off the Grand Stop. I think I walked in there by accident to like apply for a job when I first got here.
The students were more excited about that than like going to the Met.
Yeah, of course they were. Okay, so when you make a painting, or when you made Dusty's Workspace, did you start with first? I have a couple of questions. Did you tone it that a certain color, like maybe the glow light color or something, mm-hmm. and then did you start to draw everything out? Do you have everything drawn out first, and then you start to paint, or just kind of?
Oh, this is audio, so I have to say, and I'm shaking my head. No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I definitely did a color sort of wash first, where the pink area of the lights, where the pink light was, I made that pink, and then the green area, I made that like a dark perylene black, which is like a greenish black, was my Winsor & Newton permanent rose and Winsor & Newton perylene black were the two kind of dominant colors.
Yeah.
The perylene black's kind of is a pretty greenish black. And so, I built out of those kind of color zones. And that's how my palette would look too for that painting. It still is largely. I still do multiple. I still think in terms of colors of lights, and usually there's 2 colors of light. So my palette will have this kind of zone of one color and this kind of zone of another kind of family of colors. Mm-hmm. And when I'm painting, at least initially, it's very much separate. And then things, then there's that. The what's the Star Trek? What do they call it? The neutral zone. Uh-huh. The between them and the Cardassian Empire, right? There's the neutral zone. There's like that moment where they meet
and are friends, or at least not enemies,
right? But I don't draw it out. I mean, I might do a quick sketch to sort of just get a sense for how stuff's going to be. But I get worried when anything in the painting feels too closed down, like it's been figured out.
Yeah, like it doesn't have any potential to
Right. That my job is just
develop.
to be the worker filling it
Yeah,
in.
right.
It's like I have to be creating the image as I'm rendering a form, or I change stuff around a lot. It means that the paintings are really slow. And I hope that it also means that the paintings are better and richer. I think it usually does. It doesn't always. It might just be that I'm slow and I'm inefficient. I'm not sure sometimes.
So are you thinking of no time, by the way, when you draw out that initial, when you just block out the shapes, when you put in the forms of that pink and the black, are you thinking of no time? Is it something like that? Not really.
That's not what happened. That word doesn't sort of happen in my brain. I do think of negative shapes.
Yeah.
It's kind of related, and making interesting negative shapes that, are touching many objects and informing many objects. And I guess that overall balance of the donut with the hole in the middle, right? And then the positive forms forming around, the meat of the donut. But not specifically no 10. That to me, is, I feel so like it's supposed to be one way. That whole thought of no 10, that
right.
It's like you either get it, you get that effect, or you don't. And that to me also would feel like a door closing. Like
right.
Trying to achieve this one particular thing, but I don't know what I'm really trying to achieve. Just generally have a sense.
So there's a sense of mystery and ambiguity that you want to preserve in your paintings.
Yeah, they take forever. They got to stay fresh for me. I got to be able to make changes if I have an impulse. Can't repress them all. I have to allow some of them to have an effect to keep it kind of fresh.
Right. So that brings me to this one I was seeing of this one you've been working on, the skulls and the onions. Does that one have a title yet?
I don't know. Lately I've been thinking about returning its kind of message to its original, its impetus, which was thinking about this painting in the Met of Saint Anne, where she's got this ridiculous kind of she's the saint of healing, among other things, but she's got this ridiculous white thing and these googly eyes sticking out from her white, and making a self-portrait. Originally it was a self-portrait where I'm we're showing the things that I do to maintain a certain degree of healthiness. Like I make kimchi, I eat kimchi all the time. I make my own kimchi. It's so good for you, that fermentation, and so I had all the ingredients for kimchi kind of floating around me, and I'm wearing this sort of white head wrap, and then that whole self-portrait has been painted over, and I've been adding more stuff to it. But then I think I might return, not to self-portraiture, but to think about making it more about that sense of some sort of healing practice, self-healing practice, things you do to take care of yourself.
Put in some more kimchi.
Yeah, with this fear of death being the reason,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You're trying to maintain your health, which sounds very positive, but you're also trying to do that so you don't die a stupid early death. You know what I mean?
One form of health.
Yeah.
So how did it feel? Does it not bother you when you have this self-portrait painted and this whole what could be a finished composition to me of a self-portrait and all these, just things floating around you, and then to paint a skull right on top of you, and then completely add all these things and make it an entirely different painting? When you, it looks like you could have had, the one painting and then the other one there. How does it feel to you? Are you not bothered by that? Because it's what informed the decisions there?
Yeah. Well, yes.
And how did it not feel like you were sawing off your leg?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. It bothers me, but it also feels really good. It's like ripping a scab off,
Yeah,
where it starts bleeding again, but it's so satisfying to just like get rid of that itchy scab. Yeah, I mean, it was partly just because that painting was started in Starkville, Mississippi, and then we moved. So when we moved, there was this natural break where I couldn't really finish the painting in the way that I was going to, because that whole setup came down and the lighting changed a little bit, even though I could get it kind of the same. And so it allowed for a certain just sort of feeling of, okay, start over kind of thing. But it's not something that I do that all the time anyway. I do that to paintings anyway. Like what I think you're seeing that painting as an image, just an image on a computer when you've seen it. To me, and in person, the painting has like crust, where that self-portrait was pretty thick under there. And you can still kind of sense it under there, like mainly by the texture of the paint. So, in this world where all our paintings are seen on the web, on digital form, on screens, I can totally understand where it'd be like, why don't you just do another painting? Why kill the old one and not? But in person, I think that it would have it makes more sense. I don't know if it makes perfect sense to why I didn't just start another painting, but it makes more sense. I think it has to do with just personal reasons too. Like there are a few objects from the original start of that painting that are still visible in the painting today. And you might not know that, but I know that. I really like it. I really like that. I can see that it spanned years to finish this fucker.
Right. I can see the appeal of keeping with one because it is sort of like an epic journey, and it seems like it would feel a little more formulaic and machine-like to be like, I can make two for the price of one, or like, I could start a new one, but if you keep it with one and keep that organic, growth and interest in it, that's valuable. Preserving that, yeah.
We can go big on this because it connects to me to a big, like, what are you trying to do as an artist kind of question. And I know a lot of people are torn. I mean, you could be an artist that's like trying to be efficient and trying to be famous and trying to make money or survive, make money and survive. And in that way, it makes totally more sense to do 2 or 3 or 4 of the same kind of painting and get them out there in the world and sell them, or, look like you're being more prolific. I'm fortunate to have this job where I don't need to survive off my paintings. And I'm also just I think a person who I don't want to be famous. What I really want is to make good paintings. Like, I would spend my whole life making one painting if I could know that painting was going to be really, really good, important and, like resonate for centuries to come. I would gladly just work on that one painting my whole life. I have to finish. You have to finish some stuff sometimes, or I would just feel like a loser, but I'm really not trying to proliferate, or be trendy. I'm trying to, I think there's other things that you could be interested in that's not like the trends of painting. Like there's a larger conversation, in other words. You could be having a conversation. You could go to the galleries and see the work and then make work that you feel like is immediately in conversation with that work that's like up right now. And that's fine. But then there's this other kind of conversation. I feel like I'm in conversation with the Dutch masters of the golden age also, and that's a conversation that can span like centuries. And I don't know. I hesitate to like, this is a podcast conversation. This is not me teaching. I don't really talk to my students about that often. I'm like, let's have a deadline. What are you going to do? You got to finish your paintings. Let's go. Let's move on. Because you do need to finish work. But and I do some small paintings that I can finish more quickly so that I don't feel like I haven't finished anything in 6 months. I finish little works, and then there's usually one or two bigger projects that are taking months or years to finish.
Mm-hmm. So you've got quick ones and then you got long ones.
Yeah.
Sort of way to mix it up, make it interesting. So, so as for being a teacher or for learning, do you think it is important to have a deadline and to have sort of some sort of cruel timekeeper or some sort of cruel feedback system that you're holding yourself accountable to in order to learn, to make decisions and learn from them?
Yeah. I mean, for students, I try to balance classes that way, where there are quick projects where it's an exercise and the results are kind of like controlled,
Yeah.
Where I have strict kind of do step 1, 2, and 3, and we all get a certainly not even, but like pretty good result, and we all feel pretty good about it. And then we have other projects that take a long time, and it's really a chance for a student to sort of show me what they got, or show themselves what they can do, if they really pushed as hard as they can. And sometimes those are sad disasters. The student tried really hard and the results are really not great.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and that can be good. That can be very good to know. But sometimes the results are really great, and that could be good to know too. So yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. I mean, I think you could go, if you do all fast work, so I guess some people do that, but it feels like a recipe to not be happy. Balance, right? Balance in all things. Yeah.
So now to get to practical or just real dumb binary stuff,
Okay.
how did you get good at drawing? What was the things that you did in order to make your drawings look like what you were drawing?
Well, I guess I would credit professors a lot for that, because and I don't really know if there's much that they said to me. It was more like just being around good work, like seeing good work, seeing more advanced students, MFAs, professors working, and just seeing like, oh, I understand. I'm going to try to do what you're doing. So, the simple answer is like, be around good work, go seek out good people and good work, and work all the time. Just work all the time. Yeah. Just keep, and work in a way that I always find, particularly in drawing, like for me, drawing has become largely figure drawing from life. And I mean, in my own practice, and I learn one little nugget of anatomy truth. Like I've been looking, just yesterday I was looking at a book for what all those lumps in the knee are. I don't know what every little lump in a knee. I got the patella, and you can see that shin bone kind of thing. I don't know what the names for everything is, and the sartorius muscle. Like there's a certain amount of lumps that I know, but there's some lumps that I don't really know what the hell's happening there. So I went back to my book and I tried to figure out, when I'm looking at the knee, what are all these lumps? And then I put that little bit of an anatomy nugget knowledge in the arsenal. So when I'm drawing, I can draw a better knee, or whatever it is. It's just kind of an incremental thing. So I think when you're drawing, you should always be trying to figure it out. Drawing is like a kind of an unlocking of the structures of the world, whatever it is. And the more you know about those structures, the more you can see, which is glorious truth. The more you know, the more you actually can see. So I always just try to whenever I'm drawing, add a little morsel of more knowledge. However you need to get to that, you should do it. Because it's not just like drawing. It's like you have to be drawing with a mission, I think.
Yeah. Something in mind, something that you want to, do you mean something that you want to learn from the drawing, or something that you want to express from the drawing?
I guess
Or
for me,
either.
it's usually the former, something that I want to learn from the drawing. I think they're interconnected, right? If I know the structure of a knee, then I can communicate more clearly that this person that I'm looking at can feel like a real living thing that I've captured, right? Mm-hmm. The structures are apparent. I could ignore them, or I could just, slightly suggest the things that I know. I don't have to like render it all perfectly, but I could, if I know it, it's expressed, however subtly, and that creates a different feeling in a drawing or painting.
When you were in school, what was the best time? What was the period when you felt like you were growing the most? When you look back on your schooling days, what was the best period in terms of learning for you, and what was going on?
Well, I probably at Indiana as an undergrad. That was a great experience for me. We had a good community there. That place, of course, it's like college, right? I'm in college, so I'm going to all those Russian history and French classes and biology. But then there was like the art school, which was big and robust, and I had friends in ceramics and friends in sculpture and friends whatever. But then there was also this robust just painting culture. I had just painting friends and just painting community. And that was really, really great. Like, for example, I was thinking back to this. I had a painting friend, Rachel, who lived on a farm, from a farm in Indiana. And I was telling her, I think we were probably drunk at a bar. And I was like, I want to paint like Soutine, how he hung up those animals. And he just did these paintings of like birds and meat and like, carcasses. It's like that grotesque kind of activity seems really fun to me. And then like the next day, it feels like, or maybe it was a couple of days later, she shows up like on Sunday night, I think, with this like full turkey that her mom and the farm had just like wrung its neck. And it's got the feathers and the feet and the head and everything. Yeah. It's like this full on dead turkey. And she's like, here you go. She totally got it, right? She's like a painter. She gets it. Uh-huh. That's a weird activity to give someone just this dead bird in college. But that's the kind of thing that would happen. Although that was a special moment. It was the kind of thing. We just had a community of painters. It didn't feel like, it felt like to me, working on the thing that I'm supposed to work on and hanging out with my friends when I would go to the studio and paint, which was like all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Were you were just taking all your free time and going into the studio? Were you working on homework assignments? Were you doing your own thing? Were you yeah, how was it?
Yeah, I mean, there were some assignments. I guess largely that program was I was in the BFA, and they have enough to have a proper BFA class. And the BFA class is largely just you have your own studio space, you do your own work, and it's like critique based. You do work and you bring it out for critique. So the assignments were very loose or almost non-existent. So it felt like I was doing my own thing, but having to meet certain deadlines.
So you'd walk into the studio and work on your own paintings.
Yeah.
And it was still part of class.
Yeah,
it was still schoolwork. Okay.
It was just like a advanced painting, independent study, or whatever you want to call it. But there was just so much of it going on, and we were given good studio spaces, like proper lock the door. You have a window. You have your
Uh-huh.
studio space. You have 4 walls and a window and a door. And that was so great. So great.
So that was the basis of the curriculum. That was the sort of the main channel.
Yeah, for the BFA painting. For BFA painting, if you got into the BFA, you took these classes, which you met, but mainly for critique or sometimes for little lectures or things.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the work happened your own independent sort of project.
Would you have classes like painting 1, painting 2, and stuff like that, or life drawing and that?
Yeah, you still had to do the other requirements, but your painting, once you were in the BFA, your painting classes were just called BFA painting.
I see. Did the BFA start your junior year then?
Yeah, I think so. Junior year. Yeah, I think that's right. Junior year.
I see. Okay. So it was during the BFA that studio space. Is that the part where you felt like that was the best? That was the.
Oh yeah, I was on fire. That period I remember so fondly. I was painting all the time. One of the first paintings I did, there was this kind of culture of mainly women in the school, like undergraduate. Still, my school is still mainly women. Painters now are mainly women. It's like a lot of women painting right now. But anyway, there was this culture of women doing sort of like nude or semi-nude self-portraits as one of their first kind of BFA paintings.
Interesting.
So I was like, I'm gonna do that. So I did this really big, like a multiple figure nude self-portrait. I just like my first critique. There's my like wiener, and I didn't care. I was just so on fire and loving painting that I was just gobbling it up. Yeah.
Is that one from? Is that on public view? Can we go on the internet and see that one?
No, believe it or not, the only image I have it is a slide. This was in slide days, so it's in a box somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, it was big. I mean, it was probably like 7 feet tall. I mean, it was
making a statement with that.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm here. Let's paint. Mm-hmm.
I need to do a nude self-portrait. Ever since I saw that Egon Schiele dealio, I was like, I need to have one of these.
Oh, and that's who I was into.
Okay.
At the time, Schiele was one of the first painters that I felt like I found him on my own. Really what happened is I went into a Barnes and Noble, saw the Egon Schiele book and never heard of him in the painting or art section, opened it up, thought it was really great, like stuck it in my pants and stole it. But to me, it felt like, this was when I was in high school, I felt like I've just discovered this thing that no one knows about.
Right.
Egon Schiele. Of course, he was obviously well known enough to be in the Barnes and Noble store.
But that doesn't occur to you when you're
not when I'm like a teenager.
Yeah. All right. So, and when you were doing during the BFA and you were making your paintings, are you the kind of person who does, do you think of development in art in terms of practice or just in terms of more like a journey, like a project based, like I'm going to make this artwork, or do you look at it sort of like a football coach drilling, doing drills? Because I've been doing a drill approach for a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's even a normal thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
How would you do it?
Drills develop skill, right? That's the idea. It's like muscle memory, and you sort of drill yourself into like knowing something really well so that you can then execute it in a game time situation to extend the metaphor. What's the core of this question? Like, how do I just think of making art? Like, what is?
I was wondering if when you were really focused on in student days, would you set yourself drills, or would you or did you learn more by, I want to make a still life of some apples and a radio or something, and then
Right.
you would paint that and just learn from that and move
Yeah.
on.
No, yeah. Trial and error, probably. It's
Okay.
probably still my main method of working. Having a thought, just trying to do it. And what I've gotten better at, which I wasn't good at then, which is you have a thought, you want to do it, it doesn't come out well right away. And so you feel like you suck, or it was a bad idea, and you quit, or you stop that painting, or you change, But now I feel like I have an idea. If it's a good idea, I'll just keep working on it. I eventually can figure it out. But it's harder to hang on to the feeling without like the dopamine rush or whatever of starting to make it click and work. Make the idea start to be physical and work as a physical painting. So it was definitely, I was also a hormonal teenager, but I would have like despair at like some idea, just feeling like I'm terrible. My ideas are terrible. Nothing looks right. But all it was really was just like I didn't have fully the skill set, and I didn't have the staying power to like see it through. I kept trying new ideas, and the ideas that ended up living as finished paintings were the ideas that could come into fruition kind of quickly, that happened quickly enough that I got sort of some feedback that it was working as a paint idea. You know what I mean? In other words, the whole trial and error thing, I'm better at sort of, the error has to be really major now for me to quit an idea. Whereas when I was younger, a little error would make me change course.
Do you think there's something to be said for that, for getting flustered and starting anew, or do you think sticking to it has something going for it in terms of just being able to really learn more from sticking with what you start out with?
Yeah, it's a trading game for students because it requires skill. Like you have to have skill, or else you could keep hitting your head against the wall, right? And you'll like never knock the wall down. You'll just give yourself a headache. But so there's some point where you realize this idea is too big for me. Like I'm not able to execute this vision that I'm having. So there is a negotiation there for students. But I feel like I'm getting old because lately I've been less interested in the students' end products and more interested in their process. Like I want them to fail miserably. The only reason that I wouldn't just make my classes so extremely hard that everyone was just sort of like suffering is because they need some sense of accomplishment and positive feedback to stay interested in painting. You could have told me anything when I was 18 about how terrible I am at painting, how bad my paintings were, and I would have stayed the course. And I think that's something to do with me, but it also might have to do with just sort of the younger people today. They're a little fickler. They want positive feedback. They need to be told. I think maybe it's like social media training or something, where like they need gold stars all the time. Like you're doing well. So I do that, and then I weave in these really challenging projects that most of them struggle with, and the results maybe are kind of muddled. But I think you learn more from that, really. My path has been what, of all things painting, what are things that I slowly are ruling out that I'm less interested in and don't want to pursue. I tried like a Rauschenberg phase for a while, where I really liked Rauschenberg, but I realized that's not the paintings that I'm going to make. I can like Rauschenberg, but doesn't mean that I can make Rauschenberg paintings. So those were some disastrous paintings. And then I returned to this path, and then I tried more abstract paintings for a while. And I wasn't so interested. And then I came back, kind of ruled those paintings out from my practice. You know, I've tried the really traditional approach, like the atelier approach, where you're like just learning this technique and your paintings look like old master paintings. But I got kind of bored. I couldn't really hold on to that. And so slowly but surely you like whittle yourself down to a path that you pursue. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't tested the waters and failed to swim in these other directions, you know?
Mm-hmm. Sort of like a throwing spaghetti around, seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And pursuing the thing that keeps the interest. So,
right.
Let me think here. Okay. You know, so we just got a little bit of time left. I want to talk about that orb painting, though, because I'm really curious about that one. And I want to know how you approached. So you had this big, enormous ball of tinfoil.
Yeah.
And you decided that you were going to paint it, and the light was just radiating off in all these different angles and stuff. You didn't, from what I'm hearing, you didn't make any preliminary sketches. You just went in and went for it. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess the caveat being that there were paintings that came before. There was other paintings with big metallic things in the middle. They weren't this aluminum foil ball, but they were like metal planks that I would set up, and then they would reflect the light, and the spaces in the corners would be like narrative scenes back into an interior space. Mm-hmm. So that I had some like that idea of putting this big impenetrable thing in the middle and forcing the events into little corners, negative space corners, was there. And then I made that aluminum foil ball, and the first painting of it failed. It was all artificial light, and it was like I had wrapped it. It sounds so stupid, but I had wrapped it in this sort of nun's habit and like put googly eyes on it. And then I didn't know what I was trying to do. And that painting failed. And then I kept that big aluminum foil ball around, and then had another idea, which was to hang it up in this sleeping porch that had great light and make it fill up most of the picture plane, and make these events happen in the corners of the composition. But yeah, I don't think I did preliminary sketches. I'm pretty sure I just hung it up, walked around like trying to think about what angle I wanted to take, then just sort of started chopping away at it like, with an axe, like slowly making stuff happen. And things changed a lot in the same way that those other paintings did. Like my son is modeling behind that aluminum foil ball, and he was in it. I painted him fully at least 3 times before I arrived at the pose that he's in now, which is like his head is slowly emerging like it's sunrise around this like thing. And he's wearing socks and underwear and no shorts. And you see like his little thigh sticking out, and his little boy socks sticking out. But that took a while. And I do sketches like in the middle of a painting, where if I'm trying to solve a compositional problem, I'll do a line sketch.
I see.
And just sort of think about, what if I did a little thing here? Does that help balance? And then try stuff out to see if I can't get it to work. But yeah.
Here's one thing I'm wondering, if I was going to paint that, I'm wondering, like, would I do all the highlights, like all the things of one value, like a pass of all the light parts and then all the dark parts? Or do you just or do you even think about it? Did you just how'd you approach the
yeah. Here's how I should have approached it. And I haven't painted that since, another thing like that since, because it did burn me out a little bit. But I should have, and I did to some degree, just treat it like a sphere, or like some sort of regular volume, and totally ignore all the pits and highlights and whatever, and the shininess, and just sort of lay in big things of color. And then, work the mediums and the dark tones of each of those kind of areas of color, because there's like yellow light, blue light, pink light, and reflected warm orange light on that thing. So they had like those zones, and really reserved the highlights till the very, very end. But I don't know, it was so big, and I didn't quite have that handle on that. So I ended up just sort of like, I really felt like I took a hatchet to it, like I just worked an area. I was like, is that working? Okay. And then I worked another area, and just slowly came to fruition.
Okay. So you think at least a more efficient way would have been to do it like a basic sphere first, and then to add in the little aberrations or the variations. Well,
and to work very like step by step from the darker tones to the medium, so that the pits would be already painted in the dark tone that you originally laid down, and then the semi-reflection, and then work towards the highlights at the very end, like the pinkiest pinks and yellows and the bluest blues. What happened, and that, to some degree I did that, but I wasn't able to really do it across the whole giant. That painting's 4 feet, so that sphere is like, or that aluminum bubble thing is like 4 feet big. There's a lot of nooks and crannies in that fucker. Yeah, but I think it did a good job at really capturing your gaze. Like the initial thing that you see when you look at that painting is this big, shiny, silvery nugget, catching all kinds of light, which is what I wanted. I wanted that initial kind of like, it grabs you because it's like a shiny object.
Yeah.
And then you would see all the other little stuff stuffed around, the stuff that really brings the content, I think, is sort of secondary.
Yeah, a strong first impression, but that leads to further discoveries within.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like the tinfoil thing. It reminds me of Lucian Freud portraits almost. There's some sort of crinkly complexity to it.
Right, like those Lucian, that blanket, that white kind of blanket painting. I think it's a sheet, and it's like most of the painting is all these pits and valleys of this white sheet. Like dirty. Are you talking about one
that's just of a sheet, or is it that one when the woman's like leaning up against a bunch of old crumpled sheets?
Yeah, but most of the paintings is like, there's a figure in it, the one I'm thinking of, but most of the painting is this crumply white sheet.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a wrap. Let me see if there's any last thing I'm dying to know here. One thing I'm curious about, when you're teaching, do you feel as if the teaching that you're doing, do you kind of bring it into your work? Do you feel that teaching is teaching you? I mean, I always hear that cliche that the teacher ends up learning more than the students. Do you feel that teaching is helping you to learn about painting?
Yeah. I think very, very directly it does. So there's like, this wonderful feeling, where a grounding feeling when you return to the basics over and over. Like, I'm teaching these basic skills, these basic ideas over and over. That part is really grounding and sort of satisfying feeling. I mean, I do demos in the class, I'm just painting a lemon or like doing a self-portrait, stuff I've done like a million times. And it's still interesting. It's still like magic to just make something appear 3-dimensional out of, crude, colorful matter on a flat surface, or to make a person out of that same material. I mean, it's just kind of, it's magical. So there's that grounding feeling. I also will find myself sort of talking, like sometimes you just have to talk as a professor, like you just need to demonstrate to them like a bunch of art language, right? It just sort of creates the way you talk in class. When the professor is like talking, that sets the tone, and everyone's like, oh, we have to, without even thinking, they try to mirror back some of that language.
Yeah.
So in order for that to happen, you just have to talk. So anyway, I just end up talking. And I find myself saying things, and then I think, do I really mean that? Do I do that in my own practice? Is it a vice I'm dispensing? Is that, I test things out in my studio. Like, I really try not to be full of wind and hot air. The students, if I'm telling them something, I have to feel it. I have to know that at least it's true for me, so that I can talk about it with conviction. But sometimes I just say stuff. I don't know where, you just say stuff.
Yeah.
I heard someone else say it, and then I say it, or a similar thing, and I think, oh, is that me? Do I do that? So that part's really great. It's like the students don't know it, but they're like the sounding board for me, like a way of testing my own ideas. Plus, I mean, then there's just like students will do sometimes fantastic things. Like they mix up nice colors. And because my studio here is directly across from my classroom, like I'll just steal a little of their color. And like, if I think that color might work in a painting that I'm doing, can I just have a little of that? And I'll just sort of steal it and test it out in one of my paintings. So yeah. So what's your question? Just, do I learn from them?
Yeah, sounds like you do.
For sure.
Okay. So, all right, here's the last one.
Okay.
How do you as a professor, or I guess as someone who has to do something other than only painting, because I mean, I feel this way. I feel like everybody feels this way. How do you keep that feeling of, I'm a painter first and foremost, alive? And like, so that, like, how often are you working in the studio, and do you make it a point? Do you have like a little schedule, or like, what is it that enables you to really keep that primacy of your own painting and your practice as an artist? How do you keep that fresh and foremost and paramount?
Yeah, well, it's hard. For me, my strategy is like the same strategy I have with my keys. So, like, here's my ridiculous key ring, with like every key to my house, to my shed, to all the building doors that I have, to my car, to my wife's car. Like every key I keep on one key ring, because that's the only way I can organize it. So I did the same thing in painting, and I moved to studios, and I've moved places enough to sort of realize this is what I need to do, which is I keep my studio close. Like wherever I need to spend my time, I also need to have the studio there too. So, because I want to spend my time. Some people need that separation, and there are advantages to that. But if I have to go to the studio, and like it's a special thing, then there's too much pressure to like do something for me.
Right.
Like I do better at like working 6-hour solid day, like 6 hours without much break in the studio. And I got other stuff I got to do. But like every day, or almost every day, carving out some time. Some days I get 6 hours. Some days I get like 10 minutes, but it's right here, so I can do it. I can do that. I just keep it top of mind that way. That's handy for me. And then when you're unable to actually paint, I like make little sketches, or I just like look up artists or read an article, something online, just to sort of keep it always moving in my mind. you know. I had it before, largely when I moved, where I'd set up a new studio and I'd put my work out and I'd put my stuff out, and I would feel like it would feel foreign to me. And what an awful feeling that was. Like having my own studio, my own work feel like detached. It was creepy, actually. It felt like, I mean, I think they make sci-fi shows about it, right? Where like the person that you're in, that looks like your wife, you feel isn't your wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that a movie? What was that movie called? Yeah. Anyway, I think it's an old sci-fi idea. Yeah. So I had that sensation, and it was super creepy. So I just try to keep it really always around me, you know.
Familiar.
Yeah, familiar.
Okay. Cool.
Is that good? How long? We went more than we said, didn't we?
We did. We went about 70 minutes, I think.
Okay. Well, that felt fun.
Interview one in the bag.
Oh yeah, the best interview you've ever done.
100%. It's all downhill from here too.
This could be like like Mark Maron occasionally brings guests back, to continue the conversation when she gets this thing up and running, and you have
there'll be a part 2.
20 more interviews and come back.
The return of Neil Calendar.
Yeah.
All right.
It's fun.
Till then, so